Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be presenting 4 approaches to general music. The first approach that we'll be covering is the Dalcroze Eurythmics approach. Emile Jacques Dalcroze was born in Vienna in 1865. His mother was a music teacher, so he began studying music at an early age. He bounced back between drama and music as potential careers in his young adulthood, while he lived mostly in Geneva and Paris. As he moved through his life, he ended up choosing music, still keeping the drama of his life in mind. He studied with great musicians, including Anton Bruckner at the Vienna Conservatory of Music. In 1892, he began working as professor of solfège at the Geneva Conservatory, where many of his questions that led to this method were formulated. Through observation, he noticed that while students could be good technical musicians, they often did not hear the nuances or feel the music they were required to play. Just keeping a steady beat was often difficult for students. To aid this, he began by getting the students up from their seats and keeping a steady beat by moving around the room. From there, he added other fundamental qualities of singing, breathing, walking at various tempi, skipping, and conducting with large gestures. He would then add solfège in various ways. He began to call this idea rhythmic gymnastics. V.H. Mead cites 4 basic premises that encapsulate the philosophy of eurythmics. First one, eurythmics awakes the physical, aural, and visual images of music in the mind, which in turn creates an aural snapshot, so to speak, from which the students can grab from. The second one is solfège, improvisation, and purposeful movement, which together work to improve expressive musicality and enhance intellectual understanding of music. The third, music may be experienced through speech, gesture, and movement. These likewise can be experienced in time, space, and energy. This opens up the ways that humans can interpret music and sound. And the last, humans learn best when learning through multiple senses. Music should be taught through the tactile, kinesthetic, aural, and visual senses to supply a universal experience for all. Components of this method, identified as eurythmics, consists of 3 related components. The first is rhythmic solfège, or ear training. Solfège is taught using the fixed do approach based on the French system, since he was from France. Students develop sensitivity to pitches, their relation to each other, and general tonal framework. What makes rhythmic solfège unique is that it combines with rhythm and movement, both locomotor and non-locomotor movement. The second component of this approach is improvisation. These skills are applied sequentially and methodically. An instructor may, for example, play the piano while students improvise movement, react spontaneously to verbal instructions, or change in musical character and nuance. In the reverse, a student might improvise movement while another student accompanies with a drum at the piano or vocally. Students soon develop the skills to be able to improvise musically and expressively on their own instruments. The third component is eurythmics itself, which was actually the last part to be developed. This is essentially combining musical skills with movement skills on a broad level. Robert Abramson describes a sequence of embodiment that the learner experiences. Hearing to moving, moving to feeling, feeling to sensing, sensing to analyzing, analyzing to reading, reading to writing, writing to improvising, improvising to performing. As mentioned before, these are applied sequentially and methodically so that this big picture idea of eurythmics can be achieved. As we move into ways to apply the Dalcroze method, this can be divided into beginning, intermediate, and advanced, but is not limited to this. For a beginning lesson, it is common to begin with walking to improvised music and responding to changes in tempo, dynamics, and phrase in quick reaction games. Then the students begin to understand how physical adjustments such as energy and flow of body weight need to occur in order to physicalize the music. At the intermediate level, these same lessons mentioned previously can address polyrhythm or meter, canon, tense and release, breathing, among other more complex musical functions. All of these are now in a group setting to develop nonverbal skills required in both music and dancing. The advanced level begins to add creation components, giving the student free rein within parameters to come up with rhythms and moves of their own, and play with how those interact with each other. Overall, the Dalcroze method works to instill the feel of music within the entire body, and therefore allows students to understand music on a more natural and physiological level.
The Kodai approach. A thorough knowledge of the material must precede everything, for anything else can be built only upon this knowledge. Any efforts to achieve aesthetic results which either precede or discard knowledge are equivalent to building castles in Spain, as said by Zoltán Kodály. Zoltán Kodály was Hungarian-born in 1882. During his 85 years, he was a composer, musician, teacher, linguist, and ethnomusicologist. Ethnomusicology had a big influence in his studies, and the learning of folk music led him to adventure with Béla Bartók to begin collecting folk songs from cultures all over Europe. Kodály used these folk songs to help teach musical literacy skills to children. His method is more than just a means of instruction, but rather an approach to building upon the role of music in everyday society and in the lives of children, youths, and adults alike. According to Kodály's philosophy, music plays a role in an intellectual, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual development. He thought of music as being a sort of spiritual food that we all feed on, and that it is up to the teachers to nurture a love for music in the students, sensing how it makes their moods change, and knowing how they get involved with the music-making process. Kodály sought to develop the innate musicality that is present in all human beings, and that all children should be taught music as early as possible. He believed that the love for music is built through the music-making process. Kodály teachings rely heavily on the human voice as a medium to learn music because it is the most accessible to everyone. He taught primarily through folk songs because he believed that they contained all of the basic characteristics necessary to teach the fundamentals of singing, movable do being a big part of that. Kodály teachings recommend having access to children's musical literature like nursery rhymes and songs, counting out rhymes, and musical games and chants. It is also recommended that the music be reflective of the children's culture and ethnic backgrounds. It is also good to use authentic folk music of other cultures so kids can be immersed into the other cultures that belong to those folk songs. Reading examples based on music of oral traditions is strongly encouraged as well. There are several methodological tools used in the Kodály method, one of them being movable do tonic solfa. This is where do can be any note and follow the same pattern to build scales from. These are easier to remember than letters or numbers, which helps develop a sense of tonal function. The Kerwin-Glover hand signs are another tool that are used in the Kodály method. These represent the movable solfa and gives each one a physical representation of the pitch. These help aid in remembering patterns and intervallic relationships. Another tool used in the Kodály method is rhythmic syllables, which are meant to be voiced and not written, but are used as a means to count and learn rhythm. Ta for a quarter note, TT for 2/8, and TB for 4/16. Stick or solfa notation teaches kids a relative system of notation as opposed to a fixed notation to better help their oral skills. Kodály's pedagogy starts with sound first and then sight, going from the known to the unknown, and that learning occurs through problem solving. His general order is hearing, singing, showing, verbalizing, deriving, writing, reading, and creating. Concepts are taught in a sequence based on the most prominent musical idioms of a culture's song repertoire. Those are usually rhythm, melody, form, harmony, expression, style, terminology, and symbols. Through these concepts, several skills are developed, like singing, listening, movement, memory, inner hearing, which is audiation, writing, dictation, reading, sight reading, part work, improvisation, composition, conducting, and instrumental work. The Kodály method is usually instituted in a five-phase instructional sequence. Prepare phase, in which students experience a new musical element or concept and how to identify its presence. Phase 2, which is the make conscious phase. Students name the element and revisit it to show its visual representation. Phase 3 is the reinforcement phase, in which writing and reading the specific pattern is used to name the new element and then to explore through listening and singing. The practice phase is phase 4, in which students explore the new element or concept in new and old songs alike. The concept is then applied in more contexts. And the last phase is the creating phase, in which students use their knowledge to improvise, compose, perform on instruments, and all around demonstrate their mastery of the skills.
Next, we will be discussing the Orff approach to general music. Karl Orff was a German composer and was born in Munich in 1895 and passed away in 1982. While he is known for his major compositional work, Carmina Burana, his work is also a large component of general music education. The ideas of his pedagogy were influenced by Dalcroze Eurythmics and the New Dance movement. In 1924, Orff and his colleague Dorothy Gunther, a movement teacher, founded a school in Munich called the Gunther School. This school worked to ensure that musicians and dancers could learn from each other and gain a respect for each other's forms of art, specifically through improvisation. When the school became popular, a recording of the music making caught the attention of Bavarian Radio, who helped Orff record sessions to broadcast to German elementary schools in order to share the knowledge. Many years later, in 1963, the Orff Institute was opened. Although changes have been made, the Institute still runs to this day. Thanks to Arnold Walter, North America was able to receive information about the program and courses. A main idea behind the concept of Orff is that the potential musicality that humans are born with should be developed through natural group play behavior. Rhythm should be drawn from language to lay a foundation. Music making should be hands-on and ultimately enable success, satisfaction, and joy. Schoolwork lessons are meant to explore and develop skills through many means. In regards to speech, playing children frequently use sayings and rhymes. The words are spoken rhythmically with a steady beat, and this helps to establish sensitivity to beat and pattern. Children's play also often involves songs that can provide groundwork for singing ability, as well as establishing tonal relationships. Movement is also an important aspect of this approach. Both locomotor movement and non-locomotor movements are used. Lastly, playing instruments is something largely associated with the Orff approach. Body percussion includes clapping, snapping, slapping thighs, and stepping feet. There is also an opportunity to use unpitched hand percussion, which includes maracas, jingles, cowbells, or even the vibroslap. Orff instruments are the most closely associated with this approach. They are special pitched percussion instruments that are at a size that is accessible to children. These include xylophones of different sizes, metallophones, glockenspiels, and many more. Schoolwork teachers refer to the following 4 general procedures for musical development. Exploration is meant to discover possibilities by oneself. Imitation is using echoing to develop skills. Improvisation involves making up patterns and structures based on what was learned through the imitation stage. Creation is the combination of material from previous procedures into forms such as rondo or ABA.
The next approach is the Gordon approach. Edwin Gordon lived from 1927 to 2015. He was extremely interested in how humans learn when they learn music. The foundation of his philosophy was audiation. He developed the music learning theory, which is a method of teaching audiation. There is music aptitude and music achievement. Music aptitude is where each human has the potential of music. Music achievement is the reality of that potential. Gordon believed that everyone was born with music potential. Both music aptitude and music achievement depend on audiation. Gordon theorized that audiation develops from childbirth to age 9. His philosophy focuses on the preparatory audiation stage into the audiation skills. The way his teaching of audiation works was having children learn audiation the same way they learn their native language. It is always sound before symbol. There are 3 types and 7 stages to preparatory audiation. First, there is enculturation, which is from birth to age 2 through 4. With this type, there is absorption, random response, and purposeful response. The second type is imitation, which is from ages 2 to 4. Within this type are shedding egocentricity and breaking the code. The third type is assimilation, which is from ages 3 to 5 to 4 to 6. Within this type is introspection and coordination. After the preparatory audiation comes real audiation. There are 8 types, which are listening to, reading, writing, recalling and performing, recalling and writing, creating and improvising unfamiliar music while performing or in silence, creating and improvising unfamiliar music while reading, and creating and improvising unfamiliar music while writing. Along with the 8 types, there are 6 stages, which are momentary retention, imitating audiation patterns, establishing tonality and meter, retaining tonal and rhythm patterns, recalling patterns, and finally anticipating and predicting these patterns. According to Gordon, learning sequence activities are the essential tools for tonal audiation development and rhythm audiation development. Learning to discriminate among tonal patterns and rhythm patterns through imitation through the following 4 sequences: music skill learning, tonal learning, rhythm learning, and pattern learning. These learning sequences should be incorporated for 5 to 10 minutes in each lesson. Discrimination learning is responding differently to different stimuli. Only then can you infer. This is where inference learning happens. Inference learning deals with evidence and reasoning. You can't have inference learning without discrimination learning first. Most of these classroom activities use continuous movement with flow, weight, space, and time. From these movements, students can then measure space and time between beats. The proper use of the head voice helps in the development of tonal audiation. Just as important, children constantly are needed to be reminded what proper breaths and posture look like. Music improvisation is another great activity. It helps them own their own music thoughts, express music individuality, and deepen their music understanding and enjoyment. You can then combine learning sequence activities with classroom activities. When combining these activities, this process is called whole part whole. It is a 3-stage process. First is experiencing music as a whole. Second is studying the parts through tonal and rhythm patterns. And third is experiencing music as a whole again with better understanding and comprehension. The Gordon approach used 2 types of solfege, tonal solfege and rhythm solfege. Gordon suggested to use movable do tonal syllables, la bass minor, re bass Dorian, mi bass Phrygian, fa bass Lydian, sol bass Mixolydian, and T bass Locrian. Rhythm solfege should be based on beat functions rather than note values. In the end, everyone is born with the potential of music. All teachers should recognize the types and stages of preparatory audiation and audiation itself. With that, children can become independent musicians. The primary focus is the music learning processes, not the music products.